6 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order. We have, first item of business is adoption of the agenda. Moved by Stewart, seconded by Finch, that the agenda be adopted as printed and circulated. Are there any issues with the agenda or suggested changes? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Not seeing any. Minutes. Moved by Finch, seconded by Stewart, that the minutes from the October 4th, 2023 council meeting be adopted as printed and circulated. Are there any issues with those minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We have no public comment period submissions, and we have one timed item at 6:30. So until 6:30, I'll jump down to reports from staff, and that takes us down to 8.6, Corporate Services Department. Report 2023-133 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding an update on the Zorra Municipal Center project. Don, is there anything you want to highlight for council before I ask them for questions on your report? No. Questions on the report? Councilor Mitchell.
Yeah, Don, can you just expand on what we're trying to accomplish here as far as what type of light? And to me, it's there's a difference whether we're talking natural light or artificial light that we're trying to spread around the building.
The original building did have glass fronts on all the offices. Because we have, I think there's 8 or 9 interior offices, that's why we designed it that way, so that those interior offices would have some natural light come through the glass on the exterior offices and the interior offices. Due to cost, we removed the glass fronts and replaced it with drywall. We had also looked at having side lights, but it just didn't seem very practical, and it didn't give it a really good look. It was more institutional. So the other option that we looked at that's before council now is having birch doors with a 24 by 72 glass insert that would let as much natural light come through the door openings as possible. So that's what we're seeking council approval for today.
Any other questions on the report? Moved by Stewart, seconded by Finch, that council approve the increase of $34,023.45 to cover the door requirements. Councillor Stewart, as the mover, do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, just to say that I think, you know, any sort of very, very modern and I'll say expensive at the same time design would have the original intent of all glass. It's commonly seen in some places, and it does bring a lot of natural light through. I can understand, you know, wanting to be economical, but at the same time, I think if we stick with drywall partitions with hollow metal doors, it's going to look and feel very uninviting, both into the offices and into the hallway in general, and the whole open space that we're creating. So I think in keeping with the light coming in from above and the clear story as well, I think this is a fairly minor cost increase for what it's going to give in terms of appearance from both the public side and day-to-day experience of people working there.
Councillor Finch is the seconder. Do you wish to speak to it? Anybody else? Councillor Mitchell.
When it comes to spending money, I'm usually pretty black and white, but I'm kind of torn on this one because originally I was at $34,000. No. When we originally approved the contract to build this and all the additional, we were looking at, we would have a shortfall of about $788,000 that we would have to borrow. With the list of change orders that came through a couple of meetings ago, electrical, HVAC, and that sort of things, that added another $380,000, and then there was about a $280,000 increase back early when I think there was storm sewer and excavation work that extra, and an increased generator. So according to my calculations, based on the notes that I took over a year ago, we're now looking at 1.4 million that we're going to have to borrow. But as I noted in my question, to me it makes a big difference whether we're talking entering natural sunlight as opposed to just moving artificial sunlight from one area to the other. So I'm going to change how I intended to vote when I came into supporting it. One area that it may be beneficial is that we had budgeted $200,000 for solar panels. Perhaps if we have more natural light coming in, then the 200,000 will cover what we need. Don't know if that has an impact or not, but yeah, I'm going to support it. 34,000 sounds like a lot for putting indoors, but considering there was a cost savings by not glassing in the fronts. I would note though that what I've noticed in this building is that the office doors are generally always wide open, so I think that kind of accomplishes the same thing. But it's pretty rare that I don't have a firm yes or no, but I'm going to go a weak yes on this one.
You're just going to put your hand halfway up? I'm going to support this because I think, you know, if I think back to how we awarded this project, we decided to award it in a different way. It's not, you know, a strict, here's the drawing and here's how we're going to build it. I think the way we awarded it, we knew that it would accommodate changes, so we had a lower starting point for the total project cost. And I honestly think that if you're going to build a building like this, you build it once and you do it right. And I would hate to invest in this place where our staff are going to work, you know, this staff, future staff, et cetera, and not do it the right way. So I think we should do this and make the best workplace for our staff. And just to that point, if anybody thinks, you know, okay, we're spending taxpayer dollars on our staff, I would say yes, we're absolutely going to spend taxpayer dollars on our staff. Especially nowadays when I talk to counselors from all over Ontario and the stresses they're under trying to attract and retain staff. And we have had exactly the opposite issue in Zorra because we do things like providing our staff a good workplace. We do things like a compressed work week. We have flexible hours. And I can tell you that some of the places that are trying to attract and retain staff, $34,000, they could blow on losing one member of a senior management team and replacing them. 34,000 right there. Second person, another 34,000. Third person, another 34,000. You know, I'm not suggesting that if our staff have windows in their doors that they're all going to stay here forever. Certainly is my expectation and hope that they do. But I think it's by a million little things like this that you create a positive workplace environment. And again, for residents that are watching this, it is our staff that deliver the services every day, not this council. I can't drive the Zamboni. I don't drive the grader. Nobody wants me coming to their house if there's a fire. So we have to do everything we can to attract and retain the staff that are going to deliver the services for our residents in the future while council is not at a council meeting. So I'm going to support doing this. Anybody else before I read it again and call the question? Moved by Stewart, seconded by Finch, that council approve the increase of $34,023.45 to cover the door requirements. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 8.6B, Report 2023-134 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding draft memorandum of understanding with the Thames Valley District School Board. Dawn, is there anything you want to highlight in there for council before I ask them for questions?
I would just leave it open for questions.
Questions from council? Moved by Stewart, seconded by Finch, that council approve the memorandum of understanding between the Corporation of the Township of Zorra and the Thames Valley District School Board attached to Report 2023-134. Is there any discussion? One question that I should have asked before, do we know when we're expecting the board to sign it? Have they signed already? They've signed it already, right? Okay. All right. Anybody else? I am really happy and stunned to see this. considering the reason that I first got elected to this council, this is kind of amazing to me that we would have these words on a piece of paper at this council. I think the real work now is to figure out how we're gonna actually exploit the memorandum of understanding to deliver for our residents, whether it's the school board or the township, to deliver the maximum for them. But this is immense potential for our residents, right? I mean, just immense, how much more we can deliver for them with the same or fewer dollars. Yeah. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 9A, correspondence requiring direction. Correspondence from Catherine Fife, Waterloo MPP, regarding support for Bill 21, Fixing Long-Term Care Amendment Act. Any questions on that before I read the motion? Moved by Finch, seconded by Mitchell, that council support the Till Death Do Us Part Act and that the support resolution be forwarded to Catherine Fife, MPP, Waterloo. Councillor Finch is the mover. Do you wish to speak to that?
So I'm in support of this. When I first looked at this, I thought there was no way this bill is ever going to be passed. Working in long-term care, I see firsthand the troubles that our healthcare system is dealing with. After getting a chance to speak with Catherine, I understand a little bit better. It is more about getting the conversation going, acknowledging the rights of the residents not to be separated from their spouse upon admission, but to have accommodations for their spouses. I see firsthand the heartache when the spouse has to leave for the night and the other spouse is crying, the resident's crying, when they have been partners for 40, 50, 60 years and not having much time apart from each other. The resident's health definitely declines, and sometimes we see the decline in the spouse that is visiting as well. Catherine spoke of this idea of a care compass with independent living, retirement living, and nursing all in one. It sounds lovely. It also sounds like a lot of work to get to that point. But it is important work to give these seniors all that they deserve. So I support this.
Anyone else? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm generally in agreement with this, and Councillor Finch is involved in long-term care as a caregiver. I'm closer than anybody else to long-term care, possibly as a resident. So I know if the time comes when Janice and I do need, or if we do need it, I would be lost if we were separated. So definitely, we're in a situation where both partners need comparable care. I think this is a no-brainer that they shouldn't be separated. I think it's, as you alluded to, it's a tragedy when one spouse is in this nursing home and the other one's in another nursing home, and neither one of them are mobile enough to see each other, or even when one is not in a nursing home and their life is reduced to just visiting hours. Where it gets complicated, I think, is where you have one spouse that needs a different level of care from another spouse. And I think of my in-laws, where my father-in-law spent about 7 years before he passed with Alzheimer's in a very intensive long-term nursing home. My mother-in-law doesn't need that level of care, so she lives in a senior's residence. So they were separated. So you talked about the long-term care campuses, and that's mentioned in the additional information that was included with the letter. And I think that's the ideal. I don't know how many there are around. I know Kingsway and St. Mary's has different levels of different levels of care, and you kind of graduate from living in an apartment to full care as you get closer to the end. So no, I support it. I think there are certainly a lot of challenges to implementing it, but I think it's, as you said, a step in the right direction to having people live out the last years of their lives together.
Anyone else? I wonder, a question, I guess, should we consider forwarding it not only to MPP Fife, but also to Oxford MPP, Minister of Long-Term Care in Oxford County, because Oxford County is responsible for delivering not all of the long-term care services, but a large number of long-term care beds in Oxford County. if you want to, if your intention here is to bring it to all the people who who could play a role in advancing it, I wonder if that would be a good thing to do.
With speaking with her today, she did say that she has it circulated going around to everybody, so do we need to do that? Or just saying that we support it and
Yeah, I can only tell you that I got a letter from her, the one that's on this agenda, as mayor. I did not get one as warden. So I can't say for sure whether one did or didn't go to the county, but I haven't seen it there. So I'm just suggesting that I'm not aware, it's not to say there isn't, but I'm not aware of a mechanism right now whereby it would get in front of county council. But
I'd be happy with that.
there would be no harm if it went twice. So, maybe a friendly amendment to say and Oxford MPP and shut up. And Oxford MPP and Minister of Health and Oxford County. Moved by Finch, second by Mitchell, that council support the Till Death Do Us Part Act and that the support resolution be forwarded to Catherine Fife, MPP Waterloo, and Oxford MPP and Minister of Health and Oxford County. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And information items, 11A, correspondence from Oxford County regarding community planning report, increasing residential density, next steps. Is there any questions on that before I read the motion? Moved by Mitchell, seconded by Stewart, that item 11A be received and filed for information purposes only. Is there any discussion? Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, just, thank the planning group for putting this report together. This comes from an ask that we made. I don't know if it's officially responding to a motion back in the spring, but it's definitely covering the bases on setting out the next steps for what responsible development looks like in a smaller village. We have a lot of, obviously development in front of us in Thamesford in particular, and there is areas of Embro as well. And the work that's being done at the county level right now is going to result in the best densities, and something we all talked about. I know in particular anybody who was campaigning last fall over and over again, and protecting agricultural land as well at the same time to get that housing into the downtowns, but not to make it a packed in place where there was no thought to making it a complete community, which is referenced several times. So no, it's great, and if anybody cares to read the report from the public, it talks about how Zorra is pushing and will be one of the first areas assessed. So it's great for us.
Anyone else? Moved by Mitchell, seconded by Stewart, that item 11A be received and filed for information purposes only. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And items of community interest in the calendar. So we are at October 18th, council meeting. The next things I'm seeing in the calendar are not a lot. There's something this weekend, isn't there? Councillor Finch.
Tomorrow night at Knox United in Embro, the Zorra Ag Society is holding a strategic planning meeting at 7:30. November 4th, the Heart of Oxford is having their Heart of Oxford at the auditorium in Woodstock. November 11th, 1 to 4, U13 Edge is doing a bottle drive at the Embro Arena. October 28th, there's a Halloween party at the Embro Legion. November 4th, there's a spaghetti dinner at the Embro Arena, put on by the Zorra Agricultural Society. And we have 2 plays coming up.
Yeah.
One in Thamesford and one in Embro. Both in November, so look for those and get your tickets.
Anything else on the calendar? Councillor Mitchell.
Saturday, October 28th, 8 p.m., Haka presents Diamond Mine. They're our Blue Rodeo tribute band. Tickets are $30 and available from any Haka member.
Else?
Halloween, you can come to the fire hall in Thamesford if you're trick-or-treating. I'm not sure if Embro does the same thing, to be honest, but Thamesford will have it.
I don't remember it. Anyway, all right, nothing else for the calendar? All right, then, we got 10 minutes until the planning report, so, think we can get closed down in 10 minutes? I doubt it. All right, let's try it. Let's go for it. Yeah, let's do it. Moved by Stewart, seconded by Finch, that the council meeting be adjourned. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Moved by Finch, seconded by Mitchell, that the council meeting be closed, that council move into closed meeting session at 6:21 p.m. pursuant to section 239.2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. And Maggie, can you let us know? was at an event at Woodingford Lodge where we were announcing the day program thing, and Ernie was speaking, and he was at the podium, and it was outside, and it was a beautiful day, it was all sunlit and everything, and he was talking, and a fly came around, and it was like hovering in front of him, and right, like, he didn't miss a beat. Like, right in the middle of talking, he just went, and just kept talking. It was. Thanks, Michelle. You could say that about that comparison in a lot of ways. All right, so we are back in open, Maggie. Thank you. And moved by Stewart, seconded by Finch, that the council meeting be adjourned at 6:31 p.m. for the purposes of holding a public meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Planning Act, and that council move into the Committee of Adjustment for the purpose of hearing a minor variance application. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And Spencer, I'll turn it over to you to provide your report on minor variance application A10-23 submitted by Marc Langlois pertaining to lands described as Part Lot 13, Concession 5 in the Township of Zorra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to council, or the committee now, staff and members of the public joining us here tonight. The application before the committee, A10-23, is an application for minor variance that's seeking relief from the noted provision on the screen before the committee. And in this case, the applicants are seeking relief in order to establish a second dwelling on their property. The property is described there for you. However, I just want to highlight a few things throughout the report, particularly as they pertain to criteria for additional residential units, which is what we're talking about here in the subject application. For some context, the applicant's property is just on the west side of 41st line between Road 80 and 82. And the property itself, as shown on the plate, is just under 3/4 of an acre in size, as outlined in the report, whereas the specific criteria outlined in Table 5424 in the Township zoning bylaw lays out a number of criteria for new ARUs. Specifically, this table refers to new detached ARUs. So there are different options for additional residential units, as the committee is aware, and some of those will come in the form of additions to existing dwellings, and some others will come as detached structures, which is the case as outlined in the report before the committee. The specific criteria in this instance that the applicant is unable to satisfy is that which relates to lot area. So as I mentioned, the lot area is about 7.74 acres, whereas the requirement per the zoning bylaw and per the county's official plan relating to ARUs for detached structures, detached ARUs, is approximately double that, right? It's 0.6 hectares or 1.48 acres. There are a number of rationale for this particular criteria. To provide in simplest terms, the idea is that if you're accommodating a dwelling, a septic system, driveway, open space, accessory structures, etc., you need to have sufficient room to accommodate all of those things. When we're looking at adding additional residential units in detached accessory structures, we took a look at the minimum required lot area for a single detached dwelling, which typically where services aren't provided is 2,800 square meters. We approximately doubled that in order to accommodate detached additional residential units, in order to accommodate 2 homes, 2 septic systems, potentially 2 accessory structures, depending on the situation, etc. As far as the application is concerned, as a result of the circulation, there was nothing really that came out from any public agencies or otherwise. There was some consultation in-house with the chief building official, just specifically as it relates to the septic system. We do know that a septic system can be accommodated on the subject lot. Our issue is more about not just the subject lot and being able to accommodate the septic system itself, but taking a step back and looking at the intent of the lot area requirement as it relates to cumulative impacts, potential for negative impacts to groundwater resources, having a potential interaction of the septic system, the associated weeping bed, as the case may be, and the groundwater levels. Groundwater I wouldn't pretend to be a hydrogeologist, but groundwater levels do fluctuate periodically, and we need to ensure that when these septic systems fail, which inevitably all septic systems will fail at some point in time, we need to ensure that a replacement septic system could be accommodated, and so too we need to ensure that there wouldn't be any negative impacts to groundwater resources. All that said, the planning department is not supportive of the application here tonight, largely due to the fact that it's, in our opinion, grossly undersized. The criteria is 0.6 hectares. The applicants are exactly 50% of that required lot area. The policies surrounding additional residential units are fairly recent. They were just endorsed February 8th of this year. A few months later, this council approved the provisions to allow ARUs throughout the township. The intention, just to be clear, the intention was never to permit all types or any type of ARU on all lots on any configuration. Further, the intent of Bill 23, just to highlight that, Bill 23 only really forced municipalities in Ontario to allow up to 3 residential units on a residentially zoned parcel of land that has full municipal services. So I just want to be clear that Bill 23 did not touch on rural lands or lands outside of service settlements, whereas we at the county heard from our municipal partners and realized there is a need and a desire to allow for these type of uses outside of settlements. So we've come up with the proposal, and what was adopted in February of this year reflects what, at the time, county council and local councils felt was appropriate to allow additional residential units in their many forms on lots throughout not only the township but throughout the county. Staff do not feel that the application tonight is minor in nature. We further don't feel it's desirable to allow this type of development on such an undersized parcel. We also don't feel that it's applicable, that it's actually meeting the general intent and purpose of the official plan. So too, we think it flies in the face of the Township of Zorra zoning bylaw. In particular, the table noted that the applicant is seeking relief from. The applicant is here to speak to any questions that committee might have, and I'm happy to do the same.
Thanks, Spencer. Any questions from the committee for the planner on the report? Let's see. Oh, Councillor Finch.
The applicant has already looked into the soil samples. Would it be reasonable to ask for a hydrological study to be done? And if so, would it change the outcome of this application at all?
Through the chair, the applicant has provided information relating specifically to the soils found on the subject property. Indicates that the soils are largely sandy. I think it was comprised of 88% sand, for example. For committee members, generally that means that the soil conditions on the site are favorable to accommodate a septic system. What that does not do, however, just by taking a soil sample, it does not tell us about potential groundwater impacts. It just says that, simply put, a septic system can be accommodated and can function well on this lot. To Councillor Finch's question about a hydrogeological assessment, a hydro-G as it's called, that is something that could be done. That's something we have looked into this. It was considered as part of the criteria in establishing policies to allow detached ARUs in the rural areas. At the time, based on the lot area we included and was approved at 1.48 acres rather, or 0.6 hectares, we felt that we didn't need to include that because with such strong official plan policies, relatively speaking, we didn't anticipate seeing deviations from that lot area requirement in that would force us to require a hydro-G of applicants requesting this. It's more a policy that's based on not every lot can accommodate a detached ARU, and that's what is reflected in the policy. There is a process to go through. You could require a hydro-G. In my experience, my professional experience, there are studies that take a great deal of time in that you need to capture the groundwater level at its highest and also at its lowest, which are in two very different seasons. It's a costly process as well, and ultimately it could result in a clear answer that there would be no negative groundwater impacts as a result of a failed septic system, but it could also do the opposite and say that there could be potential negative impacts. We don't know, frankly, without that study, we couldn't hazard a guess as to whether or not there would be a negative impact.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, question on the portion that talks about sufficient land or lot area to satisfy future servicing considerations and or replacement of a damaged. So can you expand on that? Just because, like, if it's damaged, it doesn't mean a new one can't go in the exact same location in my mind. But what does planning mean by that? That the lot is not big enough to support a second location for a septic bed? Is that what they're intending? And is that a requirement? Can you not put a new bed in the location of the old bed? Because that's been done over and over again.
Through the chair to Committee Member Stewart's question, with respect to lot area and what's included as far as policy and direction in the official plan and also in zoning, when we refer to future servicing, it is admittedly a kind of a one-size-catch-all approach, because future servicing for lands that are currently not serviced could refer to lands which are immediately adjacent to a fully serviced village or settlement. So it could include those particular lots as a result of expansion being forced to connect to municipal services. In a situation such as that reflected in the application before the committee, more appropriately, that would refer to the eventual replacement of a septic system and associated infrastructure, weeping beds, tiling, piping, that kind of thing. We do know that the applicant has demonstrated, at least based on the sketch, we do have confirmation from the chief building official that they know they can accommodate a second system. Again, it's not simply a function of whether or not something can be engineered, something can be made to work. We know that can be done. Our greater concern is about longer term. It's about cumulative impacts. It's about not just viewing these things necessarily in isolation, but taking an approach towards detached ARUs, which is beneficial and protects the resources and the land that we have in throughout the township and also the county. So the policy is not unique to Zorra. It applies to all of the townships that comprise Oxford County. But that particular question is really speaking to the eventual replacement of the septic system and its associated infrastructure.
Any other questions for the planner on the report? Councillor Stewart.
Whether it's a question or just looking for your confirmation, I think it's important to highlight here, and I just would like you to confirm this, that what we're talking about is a minimum lot size of 0.6 for as current policy, but also not a lot size per se, but a total developed area on a rural property that might be much larger in acreage of 0.8. So when we have this, we have a relatively small range of allowable, I can't say lot sizes because everyone knows what I'm saying here, it could be tied to a 100-acre farm or something like that. But for every ARU that may come in from a rural standpoint, we're basically looking at it, the criteria for an ARU to be qualified on that property, that the minimum should be 0.6 and the maximum is 0.8. It doesn't leave a lot of room, doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for actually making this happen in our municipality. So to me, but I just wanted to get your confirmation that's basically the range that we're working in if you were a rural resident, again, depending on your lot size, but that's ideally what planning says is the size that you'd have for an ARU.
Through the chair to Committee Member Stewart's question, the range is accurate. 0.6 hectares, 1.48 acres is the lot area minimum for a detached ARU. The 0.8 hectares or 2 acres, which is referenced, is really in place not just for these RR and RE lots which are out there, but to ensure that there's not too much separation between the primary residence and the proposed detached ARU. to maintain an envelope, if you a 2-acre envelope on a property. So it could apply to larger parcels to ensure that they're not further removed, occupying more land than they need to, in those types of situations. But I would just come back to the fact that when developing the policies, when developing the provisions, we took a very close look at these things, and we never intended to say, as of right, ARUs should be permitted in all forms, on all lots, regardless of their lot area or their dimensions or other criteria. So what we felt, and accordingly what county council, I can only assume, felt at the time, is that the criteria and the policies we came up with were appropriate as a starting point to get rolling with ARUs and to allow them throughout the county.
Any other questions for the planner on the report? Councillor Finch?
So the applicant would qualify for an ARU attached to the original house.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Any other questions for the planner on the report? Does the applicant wish to speak to their application? If you can just go up to the microphone there, Spencer, make sure the microphone's on.
My name is Marc Langlois, and this is my wife, Michelle. And Spencer, thank you for your evaluation of my application. I appreciate the opportunity to respond to this report and its recommendations. Oxford County's website provides the rationale for updating its official plan to allow additional residential units. It states, in part, the Planning Act directs the municipalities enact policies and zoning provisions that authorize ARUs in and/or on the same property as low-density housing types, such as single-detached and semi-detached homes. This is one way that communities can provide additional housing options and increase overall housing supply. The property where I live has been rural residential property for over 70 years. With a house of less than 700 square feet and a total and 1 bathroom, I would argue that this 3/4 acre lot has been underutilized for all of these years. I would like to make better use of this lot by building a home for my family and having a house that I can offer for rent within my community. The only way in which my application does not meet the minimum requirements for an ARU within the agricultural reserve is with regard to land size. The minimum required of 1.48 acres has been set by planners as a generic way of ensuring that minimum sewage capacity is available. But a one-size-fits-all approach cannot account for exceptions to the rule. I was able to use a functional servicing approach to demonstrate that this property has the capacity to more than adequately service 2 homes. As a licensed on-site installer of septic systems, I am familiar with how septic systems work. The Zorra Township septic application, which I submitted with my application for minor variance, shows that this site meets all of the county's requirements for 2 septic systems, including the house sizes, the number of fixtures, the setbacks, each building, well, and property line. Even with the addition of another house and garage, my lot coverage would still be less than 12%, which is much less than the maximum 30% coverage allowed by the zoning. I did not solely rely on my own knowledge of septic systems. My familiarity with the soil, I commissioned a gradation analysis report by Grid Engineering to get objective measurements of the soil. Grid's analysis showed that unlike most soils in Oxford County, the soil on this property, predominantly sandy, 88% sand, as well as 6.9% gravel and 5.1% silt. Grit calculated the T time, or percolation rate, at 4 minutes per centimeter. This is exceptionally good and means that the site could readily accommodate a second septic system. The surrounding area is entirely agricultural and would not be adversely affected by a second home on the lot. My family has farmed this land for decades, and we are familiar with its excellent drainage, especially in the area around the residential lot. The farmland is not designated for development as part of the official plan or the secondary plan, and this is not likely to change. If I am unable to build another house on this lot, I will need to demolish the existing house to build a larger one to accommodate my family, which includes 3 young children. My wife, Michelle, also runs a home-based daycare, which would not be accommodated by an attached ARU. I would rather not demolish the house. It's a great small house, but it's simply too small. Ideally, if I'm able to build a second house on this lot, I will be freeing up a home to add to the rental market in the Embro area. As the County of Oxford states, the new zoning bylaw is designed to provide additional housing options and increase the overall housing supply. That is what I wish to do, and I ask your permission to do so.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee for the applicant? Not seeing any. Are there any members of the public here or online who wish to speak to the application? Not seeing any. So, I don't have a motion here in front of me, so somebody on the committee is gonna have to write something and hand it to me. I have moved by Stewart, seconded by Finch, that the Township of Zorra Committee of Adjustment approve application file A10-23 submitted by Marc Langlois for lands described as Part Lot 13, Concession 5 in the Township of Zorra, municipally known as 415773 41st line, as it relates to relief from Section 5, Table 5.4.2.4, provisions for detached additional residential units lot area to reduce the minimum required lot area from 0.6 hectares, 1.48 acres, to 0.29 hectares, 0.74 acres, to permit a detached additional residential unit ARU on a lot zoned residential existing RE zone in the Township of Zorra. Councillor Stewart, as the mover, do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. I think there's 2 things that stuck out in the report that, you know, from a planning perspective. Number one was the future servicing, and I think we've kind of explained through that if a septic system needed to be replaced, it could be. So obviously, what stands out here is the land size. I understand the rationale behind how policy was derived. I think it's a new policy too, so I think it could use some consideration and some work. But we do have to look at each individual case. In this case, sorry, going even back to the policy, and this is maybe not speaking to the specifics of this, but I think to require that an ARU, share the same laneway, for example, like there are certain aspects of, we are not looking to create a second residential lot, which, from all appearances, it may end up looking quite similar to that with the exception of a shared laneway, but it will always be intended to be part of the same lot, and that was always the vision of an ARU. No possible way that these can be severed. So to me, just simply taking that 0.28 or 0.29 hectares and doubling it and saying 0.6, already that I could, in my mind, I could think that maybe 0.5 or 0.45 could even be the right number for a suitable lot size for an added ARU. Again, to support that, we're talking about limiting the size of an ARU to a certain square footage, which would obviously, minimize the load from a septic standpoint. So you have, again, we're doubling the size of a rural lot, yet not taking into factors of a slightly lesser load overall on sewage for that particular lot. So where I'm going with that is that when we say it's literally half the policy's area, I think it's for me it's tough to look at that and really agree that 0.6 makes sense. And that, you know, if we were looking at this and our policy happened to be written at 0.45, I would look at it a lot differently, and it wouldn't be considered, or it wouldn't be so stand out as a larger variance and not a minor variance. I also find it really difficult to understand that we could, you know, literally connect these two buildings with a foundation wall and sort of cheat the bylaws to make this one unit on paper, and come out with the exact same overall loading, overall developed area of the site. And I think that goes against, obviously, the push for ARUs. I think we have a challenge every time we've had one of these ARUs, especially, well, they've all been rural, to my knowledge. I don't think we've had one application that's come to us for in a service village. Is that correct?
Through the chair, those examples which we have had in the settlement areas have just needed permits from the building department, so the committee has not needed to see any planning applications.
Yeah, so every single one has resulted in a discussion, some approved, some not, on their individual merits. And I think that speaks to, you know, the wide range of lots out there. And so we have to keep an open mind and be flexible to what works where, as we have in the past. And that's why I look at this. I think the applicant has gone to great lengths to look at the option and so, you know, do the homework ahead of time to support the option, to have two separate detached units. And yeah, I think we have to look at each one individually and not maybe get as hung up on how minor the variation is.
Councillor Finch is the seconder. Do you wish to speak to it?
I understand that we have policies, plans for a reason, and I also believe that we need to look at each individual application with clear eyes. This application is not taking farmland out of production. It is surrounded by farmland. It is adding housing when we are in a housing crisis. We need to look closer at the residential ARUs that don't fit into the policy guidelines, but that's when we have to look a little deeper as to, does it work, could it work? This application in front of us, I think, is better than the applicant coming to us and asking to demolish the small farm and build one big house. When we approved the ARU policy, we spoke to how this is going to be a learning curve and we're going to need to change some things, and I think this application perfectly speaks to that.
Anyone else? Councillor Mitchell.
I don't support the motion or the application. I do support the recommendation of the planning department. This is a request for a 50% reduction in the size of the lot size. And in my mind, a minor variance is a 10 or a 20. But when you start talking, cutting things in half, I think that really raises a red flag for me. And I think there has to be other options rather than doing that. The minimum lot size standard was developed through public health and consultation with public health and local building officials. So these numbers that we have just battered around for the last few minutes were not picked out of thin air. They are established for good reasons. And I believe it was noted in the report that while Oxford standards for two dwellings on a lot is 1.48 acres, the provincial standard is 2.47. So we're already about an acre below what the provincial standard to accommodate development. The minimum for an unserviced lot for a single detached dwelling is 0.69 acres. So at 0.74 acres, if we were to approve this, we're actually allowing two detached houses to be built on a lot where the standard is only one would be allowed on that size of a lot. And we've talked about how the new AR rules are a learning curve. I agree with the statement that this is not the intent of AR bylaw permit this type of development. There's just not enough room on this lot for 2 houses.
I'm really torn on this. I'm tempted by the functional argument, to say it functioned. If a septic system functions, then isn't that the intent? But at the same time, both county council and this council, considered the ARU policies before we adopted them in February and I think it was April, when we did it here. There is a sound argument behind saying, you adopt a policy and you put it in place, and not that you should never vary from it, but you should put it in place for a while and see how it functions. Also, a lot of other regions have not permitted ARUs outside service villages at all. So I think that the policies that the county and this township have adopted with respect to ARUs and the agricultural reserve, like outside service villages, are actually quite permissive. Like, as far as I know, they're the most permissive in the province at this point, I think. So I don't think I can support approving this. I think I could support, if we deferred it back to staff to see if the applicant and staff could work out something else, I think I could support that. But approving it as is, I think that, the report makes it clear that there's 4 conditions that are not met here for the minor variance. I feel like it's too much at this point in time. I think if we sent it back for it to be worked on some more, I think I could support that. But approving as is, I don't think I could do. Anybody else before I read the motion and call the question? Moved by Stewart, seconded by Finch, that the Township of Zorra Committee of Adjustment approve application file A10-23 submitted by Marc Langlois for lands described as Part Lot 13, Concession 5 in the Township of Zorra, municipally known as 415773 41st line, as it relates to relief from Section 5, Table 5.4.2.4, provisions for detached additional residential units lot area to reduce the minimum required lot area from 0.6 hectares, 1.48 acres, to 0.29 hectares, 0.74 acres, to permit a detached additional residential unit ARU on a lot zone residential existing RE zone in the Township of Zorra. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion to approve is defeated, so I need somebody to write something else up to decide what to do. Oops. Because we've not dealt with the application. Right? Procedurally, right? We had an application in front of us. There was a motion to deal with it that was defeated, so we've now not dealt with it. Now I have moved by Stewart, seconded by Finch, that the Township of Zorra Committee of Adjustment defer application file A10-23 submitted by Marc Langlois for lands described as Part Lot 13, Concession 5 in the Township of Zorra, municipally known as 415773 41st line, as it relates to relief from Section 5, Table 5.4.2.4, provisions for detached additional residential units lot area to reduce the minimum required lot area from 0.6 hectares, 1.48 acres, to 0.29 hectares, 0.74 acres, to permit a detached additional residential unit ARU on a lot zone residential existing RE zone in the Township of Zorra. Councillor Stewart, as the mover, do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, I know in talking to planning, and Spencer, you said there's not a lot of things that we could go back and discuss to change what's in front of us as in 2 separate, like another detached unit. But I think, the applicant has shown that they're keen to make this property work for both a suitable sized home for their family and try to keep an ARU in place. So I don't know what any further, discussions might look like. But I'd rather have the option for more discussions here and possibly a result of 2 homes instead of 1 than a simple, deferral or rather than deferral, unapproved, right? So.
Councillor Finch is the second. Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I'll support deferral. I was impressed by the presentation of the applicant. He's well-researched and well-spoken, and he made some good points. Rather than turning the application down, which would require him to go back to square one and make a new application, giving the applicant an opportunity to tweak it so that it's not such a major change from the standards that have been established and we're still learning to work with, I think is the preferred way to go.
Anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So, to clarify, what council has done is defer a decision on it, right? So follow up with Spencer, whether things can be changed or not, what the planning report's recommendation might
Yep.
change, and what the committee of adjustment might do with whatever that might be,
Yep.
would be determined by that. So it's really just another chance kind of thing, okay?
That's it. I'm content with that. So,
Okay.
and I appreciate my opportunity to present tonight. So, thank you to all of you.
All right. And I think then, moved by Stewart, seconded by Finch, that council move out of the Committee of Adjustment and pursuant to the Planning Act, that the public meeting be adjourned at 7:07 PM and the regular meeting of council be called back to order. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Confirmatory adjournment. Moved by Finch, seconded by Mitchell, that bylaw 51-23, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held October 18th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time this October 18th, 2023, and further that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the same and affix the corporate seal thereto. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And moved by Finch, seconded by Mitchell, that this session of council be now adjourned and herewith closed at 7:07 PM, and the next meeting of council be called for November 1st, 2023 at 9:30 AM in the council chambers at the Township Municipal Office. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried, and we are adjourned.